About 150 people have been arrested following violent scenes in towns and cities this weekend. Mosques have been attacked, shops looted and the police targeted. Yesterday, anti-immigration protesters injured at least 10 officers as they stormed a hotel in Rotherham housing asylum seekers and started a fire outside it. Another hotel in Tamworth was hit with 3 petrol bombs. On Saturday, the worst of the carnage appeared to be in Liverpool, where families fled in terror and officers were hospitalised with suspected broken bones. A library in one of the city's most deprived areas was set on fire. Yesterday, the Prime Minister made it clear who he blamed for the violence.
I utterly condemn the far-right thuggery we've seen this weekend. Be in no doubt, those that have participated in this violence will face the full force of the law. I guarantee you will regret taking part in this disorder, whether directly or those whipping up this action online and then running away themselves. Nazi salutes in the street, attacks on the police, wanton violence alongside racist rhetoric. So no, I won't shy away from calling it what it is: far-right thuggery.
The disorder has been attributed to the far right after false rumours spread that an asylum seeker who arrived by boat was behind the killing of those 3 young girls in Southport. Elsie Stankham, BB King and Alice Da Silva Aguirre were fatally attacked during a Taylor Swift dance class last Monday. 17-year-old Axel Ruda Kubana from Lancashire was identified as the suspect when he appeared in court on Friday. Obviously, we don't know about his guilt or innocence at this stage. Richard, your reaction to this mayhem?
It is horrific mayhem, and it's gone on for days. Of course, it actually started back in Leeds a couple of weeks ago, and we all completely condemn it. There is
so
no
the Leeds
place.
incident was not connected to this story,
But it was rioting by people attacking the police. So all of these riots.
That was pre-Southport, yeah. OK.
But the point is, all riots, all violence, all attacks on police officers must be condemned, whether they are from one quarter or another quarter. There should be no difference between the two. That's the key point, and it's got to stop. And it's got to stop immediately.
Do you agree with Keir Starmer saying it's far-right thuggery?
Look, without question, there is a horrific far-right element to it. But equally, there are other elements which have also been involved in some very bad stuff, which started in Leeds. So the reality
can you take
is...
us back to Leeds and just explain that for viewers who might not be aware?
Yeah, there were riots in Hare Hills in Leeds 2 weeks ago.
And what's that got to do with the killing of these 3
Because riots are riots, Nicola. Violence is violence.
Yeah, but one
an
riot
assaulting
doesn't
police
cause
officer.
another riot.
But the point is, you've got...
Hang
on. No, what we need...
You
can't justify... Yeah, I'm going to bring up...
I'm not justifying anything.
Right, thank you. Well,
those riots were
let me
about
answer.
children being taken away. It was awful.
So you're trying to justify the violence?
I'm just saying what they're about. The second... This bunch of riot was...
It doesn't matter what any riot is about. A riot is a riot.
Hang on.
It must be treated the same way.
We're talking about
it's unacceptable.
No, we're talking about the riots that are triggered by the killing of the 3 girls in Southport.
I'm just wondering why you're talking
because it's all connected, right? And we're trying to work out how and why and who's behind it.
So
That's all.
You think the anger is generally at policing rather than
I think
the root cause of what these
there are
riots
multiple reasons for the anger, much of which is, not all of it, but much of which is around levels of immigration. But riots and violence and attacking police officers is completely unacceptable. You know, I'm the guy that actually stood up for the police officers who were assaulted in a vicious, violent, brutal attack in Manchester Airport.
Is it,
so?
Nicola,
I've got
is
a strong
it your
track record of standing up for police.
Understood.
You actually
is
said
it Nicola?
that you were
Nicola,
assured.
sorry, I'm asking you a question. Is it your view that Reform, Richard's party, Nigel Farage are somehow tied up in this?
Not at all. Absolutely not.
Is that what you think?
Is it my view?
Is it your view?
I think... I went to the protests on Saturday. I was in Blackpool, in my hometown. I'm sure you saw probably images of what went on there. I wanted to go because I understand that community. I'm from that community. I know those people. I grew up around them. And I wanted to understand why people were gathering outside. There's an image of me outside, speaking to... That gentleman in the background was sort of speaking to the masses, and I tried to have a conversation with the people who were there. And do you know what? Overwhelmingly, those people on the fringes, not in the centre of it, and not the people who went on to riot afterwards. By the way, they destroyed our town centre. and there are small businesses still, having to recover from the damage that was done. But there were a lot of people around the edges who just seemed really confused and angry. It was absolutely about immigration, Richard. I think it would be disingenuous for you to say that it was about anything other than that. They were standing outside a migrant hotel. I'm talking about Blackpool here, but also I think it impacts the rest of the country as well.
I'm not being disingenuous. I'm saying it's primarily about that.
Yeah, it's primarily,
I think you said that, yeah.
Yeah, about immigration. And I think Keir Starmer's absolutely right to say that this kind of hatred was whipped up online. I find it interesting that your party leader, Nigel Farage, has said nothing about the riots over this weekend.
That's not true. He's put out a statement this morning, actually.
No, over the weekend, when it was happening over the weekend.
That's because I put a statement out.
OK, but
let's have a look at Nigel Farage.
As the leader of a party.
Sorry, Nigel Farage, I think we've got speaking here.
I just wonder whether the truth is being withheld from us. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it is a fair and legitimate question. What I do know is something is going horribly wrong in our once beautiful country.
Now, Richard, he was blamed for that because he suggested that we were not being told something about the Southport murders.
It's perfectly legitimate to ask questions about anything. If we don't ask
it's
questions...
That is so disingenuous,
hang on.
Richard.
If you don't ask questions, legitimate questions, then you are going to suppress debate and try and
It's
smear
not a
and
legitimate
label.
question if you know the answer. Nigel Farage is media trained. He had his own show. As have you. You know.
And what are you suggesting?
You know
What are you suggesting?
that you
Are you
both.
suggesting that he whipped up these riots?
I'm
Nonsense.
suggesting, if you let me take this by this specific point, Richard, you're getting defensive because you know the point that I'm going to make and the fact that it's valid.
Well, go on.
I'm not defensive at all.
He specifically spoke about the fact, he said, we should be asking questions about this information is being withheld from us. You know that the name of that teenager who killed those 3 girls was not withheld because of his race or asylum status or anything like that. It was withheld because he was under 18. That happens with all crimes in this country. Nigel knew that. You knew that. But he wanted to put out into the ether suspicion that was
Actually, you see, you've jumped to
already...
completely the wrong conclusion. What a lot of people are concerned about is whenever there is a horrific crime, it's always we're immediately told it's non-terror related and it's mental health. And it's perfectly legitimate to say, is that really the case?
Neither of those things were related.
Was he hinting, Richard, was Mr Farage hinting that this person may have been from a boat crossing, let's say, and we weren't being told? Was that what he was...
I don't think so at all.
No.
I think there are legitimate questions. When the uniformed soldier, a couple of weeks ago, was viciously stabbed and almost murdered, immediately it was non-terror related mental health. Likewise with
I took that at face value, but they do say when it's terror, they do say it's terror.
Well,
don't they?
I think you can I think it's legitimate to ask the question, and as Nigel said, he doesn't know the answer, but it's reasonable to ask the question.
But even you, Richard, on Friday, you tweeted a question saying we haven't heard about how many arrests there've been at the Leeds riots, which
correct, and we hadn't until that day.
We absolutely had earlier that day. When you tweeted that tweet,
I wasn't aware.
It had already been reported by.
2 weeks. So it's interesting, isn't it? It took 2 weeks to tell us how many have been arrested. I'm told it's about 27 out of about 2,000 people on those riots, right? And yet within a day we've been told how many have been arrested from these horrific riots this weekend.
What I don't understand, genuinely don't understand, which is why bring in the Leeds riot?
Because
it's a one-off.
No, it's not. I tell you
this is the whole country.
You can't excuse it, Jeremy. A riot is a riot.
No, it's
people
a one-off.
are very concerned about two-tier policing.
But this is Monday morning
You're trying
after
to justify,
the worst. I'm not trying to justify anything.
Do you understand what two-tier policing is?
Two-tier policing.
What is two-tier policing?
Two-tier policing is when different communities are treated in a different way.
Right.
And whether or not actually the police are acting in different ways. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
For example, the policing of the pro-Hamas marches is completely different from some of the policing of other marches.
We have to take a break. Pause it, please. Let's just have a look at the picture nationally as it played out. Very, very concerning. There's a fire here, you can see, in a building in Sunderland. Actually, this is quite a good illustration of it because right next to this building is the police station, and the police have been dealing with all kinds of trouble in all kinds of places up and down the UK. And we're going to focus on the map and have a look at exactly where has been affected. And it started in Southport, didn't it? So it was the terrible stabbing and murders of those little girls. And then on Tuesday, 3 days afterwards, you then have trouble in Southport. Wednesday, it starts to spread. And this is the key day here. So Hartlepool, Manchester, Aldershot, London. Hartlepool police vehicle set alight. shops looted. There you can see a hotel supposedly housing migrants in Manchester, Newton Heath. Aldershot, again, another hotel is the target of protests. And London, then you've got gathering in Whitehall, a lot of police, flares thrown, and people chanting, apparently, stop the boats. So that was Wednesday. We then skip forwards to Friday, and that's where we get this horrible trouble in Sunderland, widespread violence and rioting during a planned protest. And on Saturday, it all kicks off. So you can see even Belfast then involved with protesters. Nottingham, number of arrests in the city centre after, again, far-right and anti-racist groups clash. Then Blackpool, Nicola's hometown, trouble flaring. Punk rockers clashed with far-right protesters. Leeds, again, different sides clashing. Liverpool, 300 people taking part in a night of unrest in the Walton area. Bristol, then, so we go down to the southwest right here. Hundreds of far-right demonstrators clashing. Stoke-on-Trent, right in the middle of the country. 10 people arrested after police came under fire from missiles. Then you've got Hull over here. 20 people arrested. All night, chaos and disorder. And then we move to Sunday. You hope it's calming down, but very nasty scenes in Rotherham. Far-right thugs storming a mosque. A hotel housing migrants, setting fire to bins. So the hotel scenes were horrible to see. Middlesbrough, 43 arrests. There's Middlesbrough. Bolton, protesters and counter-demonstrations. And then Weymouth, right down here, 400 far-right protesters in Weymouth. That was in the area where the Bibby Stockholm, of course, was housing migrants. So a lot of it is about the boats, about migrants, about immigration, a lot of anger, a lot of thuggery, and a lot of law-breaking. Charlotte in Durham, what do you make of it?
Well, I'm dismayed by the riots. I abhor any sort of violence, vandalism, arson. Attacking the police is not acceptable. I do, however, agree with the sentiment behind the rioting because I am very disgusted by high immigration. I think that all riots, no matter who is doing the rioting, should be met with water cannons. I don't understand why our police don't have water cannons because nearly all countries, as far as I can tell, do use them in situations like this.
While you're talking, we've just seen Hull, and this is Middlesbrough. So we're seeing very similar scenes. I think the answer to your water cannon question is the police can't deploy water cannon in so many different places at once. And also,
they can't deploy them at all. They haven't got any.
Well, and these are small flashpoints. This is Bristol. Bristol, you wouldn't necessarily expect it. Go on, Nicola.
Well, I think you expect everywhere. I think everybody in
Hang on, Charlotte. Nicola's got a question.
Charlotte, I just want to try and understand, which is why one of the reasons why I was at one of the protests on Saturday. I want to understand what it is you're disgusted by. Are you disgusted at the high level of mass immigration, or are you disgusted at the politicians who have allowed for high levels of immigration? And in what way does high immigration impact you personally?
Well, both. I mean, in the past, yes, it has impacted me because I've had to live in some pretty shoddy places, I can tell you. Because
and that was immigration was to blame for that because
yes, because immigrants come here and push to the top of the council housing waiting list, and that's a fact. I'm
who told you that was a fact,
I
Charlotte?
inherited some money and now own my own home. But I mean,
I'm wondering who told you it was a fact that immigrants go to the top of the housing list.
I know it's a fact. I live in the real world. I'm not cocooned off in some little place somewhere with my eyes shut. And
neither am I. But I just want to understand.
They need to live somewhere, right? I mean, people who come to the country need to live somewhere. So I guess that's.
But I'm interested to know who has told you that.
I don't need to be told. I know it. I can see and hear it myself. I don't need anybody to tell me anything.
And is that legal migration, asylum seekers, or are you kind of lumping everybody into one group?
Right. The so-called asylum seekers are asylum swindlers, right? Nobody has got the right to set fire to a hotel. I'm totally against all vandalism, all arson. But these people are not genuine asylum seekers.
All right, Charlotte, thank you very much. You've got loads coming in on this. There was a couple of kind of clips went viral at the weekend. This is one where a lady compared the state of the country to the Titanic.
Put it another way, when you got the Titanic and they filled it with too many people, what happened? It sunk. And that's what's happening to England. We're sinking, too many in.
Is it, yeah, people mocked her, Richard, because they said the Titanic didn't sink because it was overloaded, but maybe that's to miss the point.
The Titanic sunk because it hit an iceberg.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Look, it's the simple fact is that we've got to have a proper debate about the right levels of immigration that work for the United Kingdom, and in a sense, we haven't really been allowed to have that debate.
Well, you can hear Nicola and Charlotte there.
We started to have it during the.
You two are complete cross purposes. I mean, she says she has one reality, you have another.
No, I was asking.
That's on a specific issue.
Yeah,
I don't think that's a fair characterisation there, Jeremy. I was asking questions. I was trying to understand what her position was. It's been presumed here that I would disagree with Richard's point. I agree with Richard's point. I think there does need to be proper conversations had, because the people I know from my community, they feel disenfranchised. And while they feel like they can't take part in a conversation, they get angry and they go towards the value.
It's interesting to remember, back in September 2016, just after the referendum, it was one Rachel Reeves who said that she feared that there would be rioting in the UK unless immigration was curbed. So actually, she was prescient, and in fairness, obviously,
let me go to another call. Sorry, go on.
The Conservatives have been in power since, but Rachel Reeves, a Leeds MP, saw the issues that could be bubbling up.
Wendy in Derbyshire, hi.
Hi. I don't understand why we've not got the army involved.
Well, that's coming. You know,
we've got. Well, it should be happening now. I'm glad it's coming. I mean, they're trained to deal with a lot higher violence than the police are.
It's very difficult to send an army in against its own citizens, Wendy. That is really, really hard for any government to do.
Yeah, well, there's no... How can I put it? There's no consideration for these thugs. Just get in there and sort them out. I don't care what it costs, how many of them get hurt. It's only going to be a matter of time now before somebody's killed.
I don't know if the army do riot policing like the police do. The army, soldiers have guns. This could be an absolute catastrophe if the army go in.
Yeah, I mean, we want to de-escalate things as much as possible. I just want to ask Richard, were you present at any of these protests over the weekend?
No, I obviously wasn't protesting, but I have been present, for example, at some of the other protests, the pro-Hamas protests. So you've been criticising Starmer and other politicians for labelling these protests as being far right, but yet you do. Some of these protests are far right, but some of them also are actually far left.
No, I'm talking about the protests at the weekend.
Yes, and did you see the marauding gangs of people, black-clad people in Bolton, hundreds? Going through in a very intimidating... Well,
but it's different groups
maybe, but it's different groups of people, very intimidating, very aggressive.
We've got to go to a break, but
you're saying that politicians are guilty of generalising everybody as right-wing, and that is an issue, and I agree with that. As being far right, I agree with that, but then you do exactly the same thing, and you say that everybody on the pro-Palestine marches are in fact pro-Hamas. And that is not true either.
I've been on a number of them, and I tell you what...
You must not be hypocritical.
I'm not being hypocritical. I didn't speak to anybody on those pro-Hamas marches who would condemn Hamas.
Interesting that she wasn't at any of the
stretch.
protests that you support this weekend. Before they
I
got
don't
violent.
support these protests. I don't support any of these protests.
But why is your mandate is on immigration, Richard? Why aren't you out to these people? No wonder
because I don't support violent protests, Nicola.
But they weren't
simple.
Violent to a point. I was there. They weren't violent to a point. It's very easy. You've left these people behind, Richard.
I haven't left.
Your mandate is on immigration.
We have been speaking about immigration.
Nicola, we have to go to our break.
We're the only people who've been speaking about immigration.
Hold your horses. After the break, we're taking more calls. What should Starmer do to tackle the UK riots? And Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, did he say enough? Is he doing enough? 0207 862 2222. I think I saw your leader, Nigel Farage, saying the army should be brought in. Did I see that?
He said what he said is if the riots can't be stopped, then they might have to look at that from an immediate physical point of view. You're right, though. The army are not trained to deal with riots. Riot police are.
Yeah.
So It's clearly the absolute last resort. But the other thing that we have called for is frankly, we need to recall Parliament and debate this in Parliament.
But so you've got a request to Richard?
Well, no. First of all, I want to say, question why, we're allowed to ask questions here. Why Nigel didn't say anything whilst this violence was happening over the weekend. He's waited till Monday morning to put out that statement. But also, I wanted to know why you weren't there. We spoke about it briefly before the break. Unfortunately, we had to stop. And I said to you in the break, you've let down these people, Richard, by not being present or not being a focal point and not dividing yourself or putting a clear line between you and the likes of Tommy Robinson, Lawrence.
So you want him,
that's
you
why
want
I
him
wasn't
to
there,
be
because
there.
I don't want anything to do with these people. This absolutely.
But Richard, even you yourself, there were thousands of people there who weren't far right. There were thousands of people there.
Let him answer.
I stood up in Parliament, and in my maiden speech, I talked about the impact of mass immigration on a market town like Boston that I represent, and it's really serious. So I think of anybody, I've spoken up more about this, and I don't agree that I've let down working
What do you want?
I'm standing up.
So Nicola, you want him to go
the impact
to
of this issue.
Okay, I understand. You want him to go to an area where there's a riot.
The violence or the riot.
I'm not asking you to take responsibility.
What do you want him to do?
I want you to understand, if we're being honest, that the people who were there at the weekend, I'm not just talking about far right, although those two, they are more likely than not to be reform voters because your mandate is on immigration.
I hope not. I don't want any of those people voting for us.
Right, so I'm glad you've said that.
I suspect they don't vote at all. But look...
But the thousands of people who were there and they care so much about immigration and they're watching this madness unfold.
And that's why the Prime Minister was so wrong to basically label everybody.
He didn't label everybody.
He did. He said it's
You've
all
labelled everybody.
Right, thuggery. OK, let's take some more calls. More calls, Nicola. Richard in Essex, hi.
Hi, good morning.
Sorry, you've been waiting. Go ahead.
Yeah, what I'd like to say is for Keir Starmer, what he could do, we don't have all these people that have been arrested, we do not have any court cases. We take the British citizenship away from them and put them on the planes and send them to Rwanda and let us demonstrate out in Rwanda.
Right, OK.
And that would pay a load of the money that we put in to go there. So just kick them out.
Yeah, we got those little chalets built in Rwanda. Thank you. Jane in the Isle of Wight. Hi, what do you want to say?
Hello there. Hello, Jeremy.
Hi.
Hi. Those three little darlings that got stabbed, I'll tell you, that was definitely the cherry on the cake. People have had enough. They're ordinary people that are demonstrating this, the third right, the left right, all right,
Let me try and understand. What does the terrible stabbings in Southport got to do with the riots? Just explain it to me.
The terrible stabbings, well, three little girls have got stabbed.
Yes.
Right? Now, people, they're all fed up with these migrants that are coming over. And it's...
Well, we don't at the moment. Look, no one has been convicted yet, and the person who's been arrested was born here.
Well, it doesn't matter to me whether he was born here or not. I think it's terrible anyway. But they shouldn't
we know it's
allow
terrible.
any more to come in. They shouldn't allow no more boats, because I don't think you'll ever stop the rioting.
OK, Jane, thank you very much.
Then people are only coming over here for handouts.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you. I mean, the conflation of the awful Southport tragedy with the boats is
But it's intentional, and that's what Farage was doing, and
Was he?
I'm sorry, I don't accept that at all.
There's a picture which came out. We can see this of it's about mosques. This was again running on social media at the weekend. Let's just have a look at this. No more mosques. Share if you agree. That's actually a picture of Brighton Pavilion.
Yeah. That's
so, and...
Do you agree, though, Richard, that a lot of this, not just immigration has been an issue, but it's rampant Islamophobia?
There is rampant misinformation on.
But do you think that
online.
These riots have been Islamophobic, considering the attacks on mosques? We've seen physical violent attacks on mosques.
I think it's
you won't
general.
say it's Islamophobia.
It's general concern about immigration.
But people shouting at Muslims, Allah, Allah, who the F is Allah, and throwing
that's horrific.
Objects at mosques. Is it Islamophobic?
As you said,
well, hang on.
As you said, Nicola, lots of people who are on the riots, for example, or on the protests that you saw in Blackpool are not like that.
Did your partner have the attention of these people?
Yeah, I just want to. You don't think that these
You've only got
riots are
30
Islamophobic?
seconds. You've got 30 seconds.
You don't think that there are Islamophobic
Let's pause
people?
there. We haven't got time. I wanted to ask Nicola about your husband.
Husband-to-be, yeah.
Husband-to-be,
so at the
okay.
weekend, he dropped me off at the protests, and he's British-Indian, and so I thought perhaps it wasn't necessarily a safe environment for him to be in, so he dropped me off and drove off. And I was right, because as he drove off, a group of men accosted his car and demanded that he get out and give them his car keys.
And this was in Blackpool?
Yeah. But the stories like this, they're not isolated. They were happening all over the country.
I saw, I mean, almost couldn't believe it, that groups of men were checking that people driving were white.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. So Islamophobia, racism is absolutely at the centre of this. And I think that we can have a conversation about immigration without it veering into racism and Islamophobia. But it's on leaders, particularly MPs, to be distinguishing between those two concerns and racism and Islamophobia.
And what do you make of what happened to Nikesh?
Horrific, absolutely horrific. And
Do
I
you
can't
accept
imagine
that it's rooted in racism
Yeah,
and Islamophobia?
that clearly is exactly that. Yeah. And racism and Islamophobia is utterly horrific. And as you say, Nicola, we need to separate that from a rational, grown-up debate about what's the right level of positive immigration that can work for the United Kingdom.
But that's on you.
It's on all of us.
But actually, it's on you more than others.
It's on all of us because it affects all of us.
OK, let's remind you what's...